Max, come back here. Victor Maddox shouted, weaving through the crowd in Central Park as his 5-year-old son took off down the path like a rocket. A flash of red sneakers disappeared behind a group of joggers, and Victor broke into a run. The last thing he needed was to lose Max in the middle of Manhattan. His heart pounded not just from the sprint, but from the panic clawing at his chest. The kid was fast. Max dodged around a woman standing near the edge of the park's fountain, and before Victor could stop himself, he collided right into her. "Oh my God," the woman gasped as her coffee exploded across the front of her cream-colored coat. Victor stumbled back, grabbing her arms to steady her. "I am so sorry. My kid he ran off. I didn't see you. Are you okay?" The woman blinked, stunned but still standing. She looked down at her coat, then back up at him. Her long brown hair was swept into a neat twist, and her eyes hazel, sharp, and unreadable met his. "I'm fine. Just drenched." She tried brushing the liquid off, but it had already sunk in. Max came bounding back, out of breath and grinning, completely unaware of the chaos he caused. "Daddy, I saw a squirrel with a cookie." Victor dropped to his knees and grabbed Max's shoulders. "You can't run off like that, buddy. I told you, it was eating it like a person." Victor stood and turned back to the woman. "Listen, let me pay for the coat. Or at least the cleaning. I feel awful." She waved a hand. "It's okay." "Really?" "No, it's not. I'm serious. You shouldn't have to walk around like that just because my son thought he saw a squirrel pastry thief." Her lips twitched almost a smile. "It's fine. I promise." Victor hesitated, then reached into his wallet and pulled out a crumpled business card. "Look, I fix HVAC units. That's my info. If you ever need a heater fixed or your AC dies, just call. Free of charge." She took the card, her fingers brushing his. "You're persistent. Just trying to do the right thing." The woman looked down at Max, who gave her a sheepish grin with 2 missing front teeth. "You've got a wild one." "Yeah," Victor sighed, ruffling Max's curls. "He keeps me on my toes. I'm Rowan Zeller." She extended her hand. Victor shook it. "Victor Maddox. And this guy is Max. Say sorry, Max." "Sorry I got your coffee," Max said brightly. Rowan laughed. "Accepted." Victor glanced at her coat again, stained a pale brown. "Seriously, I'll pay for the coat." "It's not a big deal," she said, but something flickered across her face like she was amused by something she wasn't saying. "Still, thanks for not yelling at me. Wasn't your fault. Besides, I needed a reason to leave a meeting early." Victor raised an eyebrow. "You left work for this?" "I'm self-employed," she said smoothly. "I make my own schedule." That was a half-truth. Rowan Zeller was the CEO of ZellerTech, a clean energy company worth over $30 million. But she wasn't about to explain that not to a man who clearly thought a dry cleaner's bill was a serious expense. Besides, there was something refreshing about him. The way he rushed to apologize, the way he looked at his son like Max was the only thing that mattered. He wasn't trying to impress her. He wasn't looking at her like she was a problem or a status symbol. He was just real. "I should get him home," Victor said, lifting Max into his arms. "We've got peanut butter sandwiches and a pile of laundry waiting." Rowan tilted her head. "Sounds thrilling. You'd be surprised." He hesitated. "You sure you're okay?" "I'm fine, Victor." "Really?" He gave her a grateful nod and turned to leave, Max resting against his shoulder. Rowan stood there, watching them disappear down the path. She caught herself smiling and shook her head. She didn't usually notice men. Not like that. Definitely not men in worn flannel shirts and scuffed boots who smelled like sawdust and soap. But there was something about that dad. The next day it rained, and Victor's heater failed. Again, the apartment was cold, Max had the sniffles, and Victor was elbow-deep in wires when a knock came at the door. He opened it, expecting his landlord. Instead, Rowan stood there, in jeans, a leather jacket, holding a paper bag. He blinked. "Rowan, you gave me your card," she said. "I figured I'd return the favor. You tracked me down. I called the number. You weren't picking up." But the address was printed on the card. Victor laughed, half in disbelief. "You remembered that?" "I have a good memory. And I brought soup." She held up the bag. "Chicken noodle." Kid approved. Max peeked around the corner. "Is that the lady you spilled coffee on?" Victor gave her a look. "Technically it was your fault, mister." Rowan knelt down. "Hi again, Max. I brought soup. You hungry?" Max nodded enthusiastically. "I love soup." Victor stepped aside, still stunned. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to. She walked in like she'd been there before, setting the bag on the counter. Besides, it was the least I could do. You offered to fix my heater. It's called reciprocity. Victor scratched the back of his neck. Yeah, well, hope you don't mind a freezing apartment. I don't mind. They ate soup on the couch. Max talked nonstop, and Rowan listened like every word mattered. After he fell asleep watching cartoons, Victor draped a blanket over him. I'm sorry about the mess, he said quietly, glancing around the small apartment. This isn't exactly Pinterest-worthy. Rowan looked at him. I didn't come for the decor. Something shifted between them. She was sitting close. Too close. And for a second, Victor forgot all about the broken heater and the bills stacked on his kitchen table. You're not what I expected, he said. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone who'd yell at me. Someone who'd be colder. I'm not great at being cold. He looked into her eyes, and for a second, everything else disappeared. She smiled. So, you're a single dad? Yeah. Max's mom left when he was 2. Said she wasn't ready for all of this. Rowan's face softened. And you've been doing it alone since then? Yeah. I mean, I've got a buddy who helps out sometimes. But mostly it's just me and him. That's impressive. He shrugged. You do what you have to. She reached out, brushing a piece of lint from his shirt. You're doing a good job, Victor. He swallowed. Thanks. Rowan glanced down. I should go. He nodded, standing. Right. Thanks again. For the soup. She hesitated at the door. Would it be weird if I said I wanted to see you again? Victor blinked. Wait, are you asking me out? Maybe. He laughed, surprised. I don't know what to say. Say yes. He stared at her, then nodded. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Rowan smiled, leaned up, and kissed his cheek. Then I'll call you. She walked out into the rain, not looking back. Victor closed the door, heart pounding, and looked down at Max sleeping on the couch. What just happened? He whispered. But deep down, he already knew. Something had started. Something real. The next time Rowan saw Victor, it wasn't planned. She was standing outside a hardware store on the Upper West Side, holding a newly purchased toolbox in one hand and her phone in the other, trying to get through to a supplier who had suddenly gone silent on a major shipment. Her driver had parked in a red zone, promising to circle back in 5 minutes. It had already been 15. She heard the familiar sound of laughter before she saw them. Max, covered in paint smudges and holding what appeared to be a stick with googly eyes glued to it, came skipping down the sidewalk. Victor was walking beside him, talking animatedly, a folded newspaper tucked under his arm and several paintbrushes sticking out of his coat pocket. Rowan lowered her phone. Hey. Victor looked up, startled, then broke into a grin. Rowan. Max's eyes widened. You. Rowan raised an eyebrow. Me. You're the soup lady, he declared. Victor let out a low laugh. We were just at an arts and crafts thing at the community center. He's been making monsters out of popsicle sticks for the last hour. Max held up his creation. This one's named Kevin. He eats broccoli and sings country songs. Rowan played along. Well, Kevin has excellent taste. Victor shifted the bag he was carrying. What brings you to this side of town? She tapped the toolbox. Fixing a leaky faucet. My usual guy's in Tokyo for a wedding. I figured I'd give it a shot myself. Victor looked impressed. You handle your own plumbing? I try. It's either fix it or listen to that drip all night. Max tugged at Victor's sleeve. Can she come with us to get hot chocolate? Victor hesitated. We were going to that little cafe on 8th. They've got marshmallows the size of baseballs. Rowan glanced down the block. Her driver still hadn't returned. Actually, that sounds perfect. The cafe was warm, slightly chaotic, and smelled like cinnamon and espresso. They found a table near the window, Max happily bouncing in his seat as he crushed a marshmallow between his tiny fingers. Rowan stirred her drink. You ever think about moving? Victor leaned back. Every time the ceiling leaks or the upstairs neighbor starts tap dancing at midnight. But it's rent controlled. And Max is settled. She nodded. Stability matters. He eyed her. You ever have kids? Rowan hesitated. No, never really had the time. Or the right situation. Work? She nodded. Something like that. Max interrupted them by accidentally knocking over his cup, sending chocolate across the table. Rowan jumped up, grabbing napkins before Victor could reach for them. It's okay, she said, dabbing at the mess. I used to pour entire pitchers of juice on our dining room carpet when I was little. This is nothing. Victor tilted his head. Big family. Just me and my mother. She passed a few years ago. Rowan paused. She was the type who made casseroles out of anything and believed you could fix almost anything with duct tape. He smiled. Sounds like my kind of woman. Rowan didn't say anything for a moment. Then, what about your parents? Gone. Both of them. My dad when I was in high school. Cancer. My mom a few years later. Stroke. I'm sorry. He shrugged. It's life. You take the hits and keep going. She looked at him carefully. How do you do that? What? Just keep your head up. Victor traced the rim of his cup with one finger. Because if I fall apart, Max doesn't have anyone to lean on. And because I've got this crazy hope that maybe all the hard stuff's leading somewhere better. Rowan felt something tighten in her chest. You really believe that? Some days, yeah. Outside, snow had started to fall, light and slow. Victor glanced at his watch. We should get back. He's got homework and I promised I'd make him grilled cheese. Max perked up. With the crusts cut off? Victor nodded. As requested. Rowan stood with them, brushing sugar off her sleeve. Mind if I walk with you a bit? Victor looked surprised. Sure. They walked slowly, Max swinging Victor's hand and humming to himself. Rowan kept her hands in her pockets, watching the snow gather on the edges of the sidewalk. Hey, Victor said softly. I meant to ask. What do you actually do? Rowan hesitated. I run my own company. What kind of company? Energy Solutions. We work with sustainable tech, mostly solar grids and modular power systems. He let out a low whistle. Sounds fancy. Sometimes. Mostly it's long meetings and budget fights. You like it? I do, she said. But lately, I've been wondering what else might be out there. Victor stopped at the corner. This is us. Rowan looked up at the building. Modest, weathered, with ivy creeping along the brick. A small light flickered above the front door. Thanks for letting me tag along, she said. Victor rubbed the back of his neck. Honestly, it was nice. Max tugged on Rowan's coat. You want to come over for grilled cheese? Victor looked alarmed. Max, Rowan knelt down. That's very sweet of you. Maybe another time. Max pouted. Okay. Rowan stood, her gaze meeting Victor's. I meant what I said before. I'd like to see you again. He nodded. I'd like that too. She turned to leave, the snow swirling softly around her. Victor watched her go, then scooped Max into his arms. Is she your girlfriend now? Max asked. Victor chuckled. Not yet, buddy. Max yawned. She smells like vanilla. Victor smiled. Yeah, I noticed. As they walked inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting. Not fast, but real. Like the first few flakes of snow before a full winter storm. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't mind the cold. Victor stood in the doorway, towel slung over his shoulder, staring at the mess of wires inside an ancient fuse box. The hallway light had gone out again. The building's electrician was unreliable at best, and the landlord was more ghost than man. He adjusted the flashlight beam with one hand and twisted the wire nut with the other. Dad. Max's voice rang out from the living room. Can you help me with this math thing? Victor stuck the flashlight between his teeth and tightened the last screw. 1 second, bud. He finished the fix, flicked the switch, and the hall light buzzed to life. With a satisfied grunt, he headed back inside and dropped onto the couch beside Max. His son was holding a worksheet, pencil in hand, brows furrowed. She said we have to draw a bar graph of how many apples we eat in a week, Max explained. But we don't have any apples. Victor rubbed his temple. Right. Okay. Let's just estimate. How many apples do you think we eat a week? Max shrugged. 3. Victor grinned. That sounds about right. Let's make it 4 so it looks more impressive. As Max started drawing, Victor's phone buzzed against the arm of the couch. A number flashed on the screen, unknown, but familiar. He answered. Victor, it's Rowan. He sat up straighter. Hey, are you free tonight? I've got tickets to the Philharmonic. Thought you might want to come. Victor blinked. The orchestra? It's not stuffy, Rowan said quickly. They're doing film scores tonight. You know, sweeping movie themes. There's even popcorn. He hesitated. I'd need someone to watch Max. I figured. I arranged something. My assistant found a sitter. She's licensed and fully vetted. I can send you her info. Victor paused. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. He looked over at Max, who was now coloring in one of the bars on his chart. Okay. Yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll have a car pick you up at 7. When Victor stepped outside that evening, a sleek, black car was already idling at the curb. The driver opened the door for him without a word, and he slid into the leather seat feeling like he'd stepped into a different universe. Rowan was waiting at the Lincoln Center steps, wearing a tailored navy coat and a scarf knotted neatly around her neck. She looked like she belonged there, effortlessly elegant, poised under the golden lights. Victor approached, pulling at the collar of his one good jacket. "You clean up nice," he said. Rowan smiled. "So do you." Inside, the concert hall was a dome of warm wood and gold accents. The lights dimmed, and the music began a thunderous swell of strings that made Victor sit back in awe. When a familiar theme from a space epic filled the hall, Rowan leaned over. "Recognize this?" Victor whispered, "Max made me watch that movie 17 times last year." She laughed softly, then turned back to the stage. For the next hour, they sat in silence, their shoulders brushing slightly, the music pulling them deeper into something neither of them dared name yet. Afterward, they walked through the plaza, the fountain lit from below, water dancing in sync with the chilled wind. "I didn't think you were a concert type," Rowan said. "I'm not. But that was incredible." He glanced at her. "You planned this just for me? I wanted to share something I love. Besides, you said movies were your thing." Victor gave a low chuckle. "You remember everything, huh?" "I pay attention." They stopped near the edge of the plaza. Snow hadn't started falling, but the air carried that quiet, waiting stillness. "So," he said, "you always take dates to places like this?" Rowan looked up at him. "I don't usually date." He raised his eyebrows. "Really? I don't have time." "Or I didn't. But lately, I keep making time for you." Victor studied her. "Why me?" Rowan hesitated. "You don't ask me about acquisitions or press. You don't try to impress me. You just talk to me like I'm me." "I don't know anything about your world," he admitted. "Half the people you work with probably have private chefs and own islands." She stepped closer. "They do. And not one of them has made me laugh the way you do." Victor's breath caught. There was something raw in her voice, no polish, no performance. Just truth. "I don't want to mess this up," he said quietly. "Then don't." He took a step closer. "I'm not used to this. Fancy things. I've never even been on a plane." Rowan reached for his hand. "I'm not asking you to change." He looked down at their joined hands. "You're not what I expected either." A hush stretched between them. Then, with a soft sigh, Rowan leaned up and kissed him. It wasn't rushed or hesitant. It was grounded, steady, like everything unspoken between them had found a voice. And when she pulled back, her eyes were searching his. "Victor." "Yeah. I want to see where this goes. Not fast. Just real." He nodded, his voice hoarse. "Me too." They stood there, in the glow of the fountain, the city humming behind them. And for the first time in years, Victor felt like the world wasn't something he had to survive, it was something he might finally be part of. Back at his apartment, Max was asleep on the couch, the sitter reading quietly nearby. Victor thanked her, tucked Max into bed, and sat beside the window for a long time, still catching the echo of music in his chest. Out in the hall, the newly fixed light flickered once, then held steady. Victor leaned his head against the window pane, a quiet smile pulling at his lips. Something was changing. He wasn't sure where it would lead, but he wasn't afraid anymore. Victor stared at the polished marble floor beneath his feet, his fingers tugging at the too-tight collar of the tailored suit he'd reluctantly agreed to wear. The chandelier above him glittered like 1,000 tiny suns, casting reflections across towering walls of glass and steel. The gala was already in full swing, the kind of event that had valet drivers, live string quartets, and guests whose shoes probably cost more than his monthly rent. A tuxedoed man brushed past, nodding politely, and Victor nodded back, wondering if anyone here could smell the drywall dust that still lingered on his hands despite 3 scrubs. He looked toward the ballroom doors, where laughter and champagne flowed freely. He could still turn around, walk away, pretend none of this ever happened. But then she appeared. Rowan stood at the top of the staircase, her dark hair swept up in a simple twist, a sleek navy gown trailing behind her. She wasn't just beautiful, she was commanding. The kind of woman who didn't just enter a room, she changed its gravity. She spotted him instantly. "Hey," she said, descending the stairs with unhurried grace. "You came." "I nearly didn't," he admitted. "I think the doorman almost didn't let me in." "You look incredible," she said, her eyes scanning him with quiet pride. Victor glanced down at the suit, something her assistant had delivered that afternoon, along with a note that simply read, "Trust me." He hadn't trusted the price tag, but the fit was perfect. "I feel like a fraud," he murmured. Rowan's expression didn't waver. "You're not. You're here with me. That's all that matters." They walked into the ballroom together. The ceiling stretched higher than any church he'd ever set foot in, and the walls glittered with gold-trimmed panels. Waiters in white gloves passed by with trays of canapes Victor couldn't name. "So," he said quietly, "what exactly is this for?" "Zellertech's 10-year anniversary," she replied, taking 2 glasses of champagne from a passing tray and handing one to him. "We're celebrating a decade of breakthroughs. Investors, board members, a few politicians. The usual suspects." Victor took a sip, then coughed softly. "That's not beer." Rowan laughed gently. "No, it's vintage Blanc de Noirs. I have no idea what that means." "You're doing great." She guided him toward a group of sharply dressed people, introducing him simply as Victor. No titles, no explanations. Just his name. And though he noticed more than one surprised glance, no one commented. At least not while Rowan was near. Later, as a pianist performed on the grand stage, Victor leaned closer. "This is your world, huh?" "Part of it," she said. "But not the part that matters most." He tilted his head. "What does matter most?" She turned to him, her expression unguarded. "What I do doesn't mean anything if I don't have someone to come home to. Someone real. Someone who sees me when I'm not behind a desk or speaking at a summit." Victor looked at her for a long second. "I don't know if I can ever belong in this." Rowan took his hand. "Then we build something new. Together." Before he could respond, a man in a charcoal suit and sharp eyes approached. "Rowan, we need you backstage, just for a moment." She gave Victor an apologetic glance. "I'll be right back. 2 minutes, I promise." He nodded and watched her follow the man through a side door. Left alone, Victor wandered toward the open balcony, stepping into the night air. The city sparkled below. Somewhere in the distance, a saxophone played from a rooftop bar. He leaned against the stone railing, breathing in the cold. "I'm guessing you're the mystery man." Victor turned. A woman stood nearby, older, with silver hair pulled into a smooth bun and a tailored coat that draped gracefully over her shoulders. She held a flute of champagne, untouched. "I'm sorry. I'm Maureen Callahan. Board chair. I've worked with Rowan since she was 22. She stepped closer. "You're the one who's been distracting her." Victor straightened. "Didn't mean to." "Oh, I didn't say it was a bad thing." She studied him. "You're not what I expected." "Yeah," he said. "I get that a lot." She tilted her head. "You know, she's turned down every CEO, venture capitalist, and heir in this city. But I've never seen her look at anyone the way she looked at you tonight." Victor didn't respond. He didn't know what to say. Maureen continued. "Just promise me one thing. Don't disappear when this gets hard. Because it will." He met her gaze. "I've been through hard. If she wants me there, I'm not going anywhere." Maureen nodded once, then walked back inside without another word. Rowan found him a few minutes later, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "Sorry, they wanted me to say a few words." "I met your board chair," he said. "Oh God. What did she say?" "She warned me not to disappear." Rowan winced. "Sounds about right." He turned to face her. "I'm not going anywhere." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "You sure?" Victor took a breath. "I've spent the last 5 years building a world around one person. Now there's room for 2. Maybe more." Rowan's throat worked. "Max. He already asked if you'd want to come to his class's family day next month." Her eyes softened. "He did. I told him you might be busy. He said, she's a boss. She can do anything." Rowan laughed, blinking away the sudden sting behind her eyes. "He's not wrong." Victor cupped her cheek. "I don't care about the parties or the suits or the champagne I can't pronounce. I care about you. The woman who brought soup to my freezing apartment. The one who sat on my couch and listened to my kid talk about broccoli monsters." Rowan leaned into his touch. "I care about you too. And Max. And whatever this becomes." He kissed her, slow and certain, as the city pulsed quietly behind them. 1 month later, Max stood in the middle of his classroom, proudly introducing Rowan to 20 wiggly first graders and a teacher who nearly dropped her clipboard when Rowan Zeller walked through the door carrying chocolate chip cookies and a big smile. That weekend, Victor came home to find a new heater installed in their apartment, complete with a handwritten note. "You still fix things." "So do I." By spring, They'd found a new place together, nothing huge, but bright and quiet, with a backyard for Max to play in and a room Rowan had already started turning into an office for both of them. She brought the world to him, and he gave her a place to land. They weren't perfect, but they were real, and they were home. A warm breeze carried the scent of magnolia through the open windows as Victor adjusted the sleeves of his rolled-up shirt, standing in the middle of their newly painted sunroom. Afternoon light poured across the floor, catching the soft movement of sheer curtains. He stepped back to admire the bookshelf he'd just anchored to the wall, now filled with picture books, graphic novels, and 3 shelves of Max's oddly specific dinosaur encyclopedias. From the kitchen, the faint clatter of dishes floated in, followed by the sound of Rowan's voice, not polished or commanding, but humming something tuneless under her breath. Victor smiled to himself and followed the sound. She stood barefoot on the tiled floor, plates in the drying rack, a towel slung over one shoulder. Her hair was pinned loosely, and she wore one of his old shirts over leggings. She looked up as he entered, brushing a curl from her forehead. "Don't say anything about the sponge. I know I used the wrong one." "I wasn't going to say a word," Victor said, leaning against the fridge. "But for someone who's run a green energy empire, you really have no idea what the blue sponge is for." "I'm unlearning years of having staff," she teased. "Be patient." He crossed the kitchen and wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing a kiss to the spot just below her ear. "I've got time." She turned in his arms, her expression shifting. "You always make this feel real. Like I didn't just parachute into your life with a car service and a 5-year business plan." "You didn't parachute," he said. "You showed up. And then you stayed." Her fingers curled into his shirt. "I'm still getting used to the quiet. I used to fall asleep to email notifications and wake up to boardroom agendas. Now it's Max asking if he can microwave a Pop-Tart with the foil still on." She laughed. "He's a bold inventor." "And you," Victor said, brushing his thumb along her jaw, "you've become part of our everyday. Not because you had to. Because you wanted to." "I still do." Before he could respond, the front door opened and Max came bounding in, backpack sliding off one shoulder. "Rowan," he called out, heading straight for the kitchen. "Guess what? I got picked to read the announcements tomorrow." Rowan's face lit up. "That's amazing. They said I read loud and clear. Probably because I practiced with the hairdryer on, so it was extra hard." Victor raised an eyebrow. "That explains the missing batteries." Rowan knelt down and pulled Max into a hug. "I want a full rehearsal after dinner." Max nodded, then looked up at Victor. "Can I wear my red sneakers with the light-up soles?" "Only if you don't blind the principal." Max grinned and sprinted off, already narrating his script to himself. Rowan stood slowly. "You know what's strange?" "What?" "I never pictured myself like this. Not really. Not in a kitchen after school, talking about sneakers and announcements." Victor leaned in, resting his forehead against hers. "Do you regret it?" "Not even for a second." Later that week, Rowan stood in the back of Max's school auditorium, surrounded by folding chairs and proud parents. Victor stood beside her, arms crossed, his expression proud and focused. Max stepped up to the microphone, cleared his throat, and began the morning announcements with exaggerated clarity. When he got to the joke of the day, "Why don't skeletons fight each other?" "Because they don't have the guts." The room erupted in laughter. Rowan clutched Victor's arm, her eyes shining. Afterward, Max ran to them, bouncing with pride. "Did you hear them laugh?" "You were perfect," Rowan said, crouching down to his level. "You own that stage." Victor ruffled Max's hair. "You've got your mom's confidence." Rowan's eyes flickered. "You think she'd be proud?" "I know she would," he said softly. "But I think she'd be even prouder of the woman standing here right now." That afternoon, they returned home to a yard sprinkled with early spring flowers. Rowan wandered to the back fence where Victor had started a small garden bed. Marigolds, cherry tomatoes, and fresh rosemary lined the wooden frame. "You built this while I was in Chicago last week?" she asked, kneeling beside him as he watered the soil. Max helped. "Sort of. He mostly just put worms in his pockets." Rowan laughed, then reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" Victor asked. She handed it to him. "Just something I've been working on." He opened it to find a printed letter from the Zeller Tech Board of Directors, officially announcing Rowan's resignation as CEO. He looked up, stunned. "You're stepping down?" She nodded. "I've done what I set out to do. The company's strong. It doesn't need me every day, but Max does. And so do you. And I need this." Us. Victor swallowed hard. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He folded the paper and tucked it in his back pocket. So what's next? I was thinking of starting something new. Small. Local. Maybe a nonprofit that helps families retrofit their homes with clean energy. Something sustainable. Something that matters. Victor smiled. You're incredible. Rowan nudged him with her shoulder. You're not so bad yourself. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Victor stood in the middle of the backyard, holding a small velvet box in his hand. Max was already asleep upstairs, dreaming of joke punchlines and cafeteria applause. Rowan stepped outside, barefoot, wearing a sweater that used to be his. Victor turned. I built something today. She frowned. What? He pointed to a small arbor he'd assembled near the garden bed. Twinkling lights wrapped around the wooden beams, glowing softly against the twilight. Rowan walked toward it, her breath catching as she saw what hung from the top, a simple wooden sign that read, Our Beginning. Victor stepped under the arch and opened the box. Inside sat a delicate gold ring, a single diamond set in a twisting band that reminded her of the first snow that had fallen the night they kissed outside the concert hall. I know this isn't a ballroom, he said, and I know I can't give you the world, but I can give you mine. Every part of it. Rowan's eyes filled. Victor. I never thought I'd find someone who could love both me and Max without needing us to be anything other than who we are. You did that. You're home. Will you marry me? Rowan stepped forward, her hand trembling as she touched his face. Yes. 1,000 times, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger. She kissed him, long and slow, under the glow of string lights and the scent of rosemary in the air. They didn't need chandeliers or invitations that cost $20 each. They had roots. And now, they had forever. A year later, Rowan stood barefoot in the same garden, holding Victor's hand as Max danced circles around them, a flower crown on his head and dirt on his knees. Rows of folding chairs were filled with their closest friends, neighbors, and people who had watched them grow from a chance encounter into something unshakable. Rowan wore a simple white dress. Victor wore a navy suit. Their vows were short, but every word carried weight. Max was the best man, and he took his role seriously, announcing the couple with a proud, "Now kiss already." They did, and the crowd cheered. After the last slice of cake was served and the final song played, they stood together in the garden, arms around each other, watching Max chase fireflies. Victor kissed her temple. You happy? Rowan leaned into him. I'm home. And she was.